There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no, which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, everyone will want a sign.
There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following
All right, everything's going perfectly. Hello, cousins. We are back. Social Contract has returned. Most triumphantly. Thank you so much for being here with us live today on Twitter and or X, if you prefer. I am Nicolette, and I'm here with my fantastic co-host, who we have worked together to make sure that we could get back on the air as soon as we could. So Mr. Jared is here with us today, and I'm excited to be back here with him and with you.
What is going on, everybody? It is nice to be back here, as you can see in the corner of the screen, powered by StreamYard. We've been like reverse engineering and just plain engineering how to continue what we were doing before. I am also very, very happy to be back. You see, we still managed to get our intro screen in there, and hey.
I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, are we gonna immediately lose your camera? That'd be great. It'd be the perfect ceremonial.
Okay, yeah, right. That always happens to me. We're working things out, guys. It's, this is indie media. We're working things out with mismatched communications. We've got American internet, so we're doing the best we can. But we're so happy to be back. We really are. We know that we have that great infectious energy that we're ready to just throw up all over you and all over the internet. So really, thank you for being here with us. Something that you will probably be interested to know. If you were enjoying our previous programs, we've been off the air for about a month. I'll get to that in a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself. But you can now catch up on our previous episodes or bookmark them or whatever, anything that you like to do on the internet, that kind of a thing. We are on currently, other than being here on Twitter, we are also on YouTube, and we are on Rumble. So if you want to go watch us there, follow us there. The videos for right now are just going to be live on Twitter, and then we'll cross-post the videos after the broadcast on the other websites. But you can follow us there if you prefer as well, because we know some of you guys don't always make the broadcast live, and that's all right. We try not to be so in-the-minute topical that, like, oh, you missed it, So
the one logistical thing that we have not lost that we don't have access to for free anymore is if you pay StreamYard like $20 a month, you get several features such as multi-streaming. Like you'll see that we're only on Twitter right now, and like Nicolette just mentioned, we're going to upload afterwards to YouTube. We are now doing the slightly more the budget-ier version of what we were doing before,
right?
Which, I mean, hey, when we're blowing up on other platforms, it will be worth the investment. But we're going to see how things go here. I focus on like sustainability, being able to do this for a long time rather than
right. Yeah, and we're also, the thing of it is that we never really did this because we thought we were going to become like influencers or because we were going to make so much money.
I'm already
or
an influencer.
Right, where people would send us like free shit or whatever. I mean, like, you can. We're not saying don't, but the idea is that, you can see this. Like, we hope that there's not going to be like a drop off in quality or anything like that. We're doing the best we can, getting everything together, except for like the first
I got the same
seconds.
Microphone and camera.
Right, yeah. Of course, with the first 2 seconds, the camera goes out in true social contract form. So, but the thing is you can, extreme close up. You can, if you want to send us, donation kind of situation. If we're not really in a position right now to take super chats like on YouTube or anything like that just yet, because we're just kind of really getting the ball rolling on everything, and kind of figuring out things. But there's like, we've got a PayPal. You can send us a couple bucks if you like what you see. And we can, go forward with that. Like, and we will eventually will hopefully be able to get a little ticker going, and we could put your name scrolling across the screen. So we've got some stuff planned for sure. And you can also pretty much anticipate the same topic, same type of quality, same stupid conversations that we always like to have at the same time of day. But we know that probably if you are joining us from where we used to broadcast with RBN, Revolutionary Blackout Network, you have then probably noticed we are no longer with the Revolutionary Blackout Network. The reason for that is it's kind of a complicated story, but let's hit the high points, because I know that this was a little bit of a dust up for the longtime viewers of our show, of their programming as well. But you should know from our end, we have a good relationship. There was no animosity when we left. But we did leave abruptly because the situation, as you probably already know, was that they parted with one of their longtime members, and that longtime member happened to be running our other broadcast, our broadcast, and a couple of other shows. And they decided, the flagship show, RBN decided they did not want to continue on with that. Now, I know that some viewers are really upset about that. I know that some of the other hosts were really upset about that. But, hey, that's show business, baby. that's the way it is. Jared and I had just happened to be experienced entertainers, and creators. Jared is a really talented musician and performer. He's got a new album out. You can check out Dog Songs for Song Dogs, Volume 2 now out. Yes. Yes, you can check that out. That's available everywhere. He's got merch, he's got albums, if that's what you're into. So bye. That always helps him pay the bills. Myself, I make art, movies. You can see my documentary on Buster Keaton, Oh Buster, Where Art Thou? You can see that for free on YouTube. And then you can purchase the follow-up book that took 13 years to write. On Amazon, and that's called Another New World, and that focuses in on like the latter half of his life, from a personal aspect, and it's a what you would call a nonfiction novel. So, and I've got a new novel in the works, but it is fiction, and it's a horror story. And I'm not really a horror person, but it's like a horror paranormal thriller thing, and I know lots of people are into that stuff. It's gonna be scary because I've been working on that one a long time, and I've shown other people versions of it, and they're like, this is really fucked up. Like, this is really scary. So I'm gonna have that coming to you. I don't know exactly when, because we have life to pay for. So it's coming though. And so the whole point of my saying that is that we kind of came into this with the understanding that we really just wanted to run our mouths about politics. So we didn't really think that we had stuff but we wanted to say. So we didn't really see it as something that could never end, or, but like we were never not really, when you're working on someone else's programming, you are always on probation. It's just like any show on television or any show anywhere on a network. You can get canceled. We got canceled. It wasn't for personal reasons. It's just because they didn't want to continue the program on. So, like I said, we don't have any hard feelings towards anyone one way or the other. We know that they did in between their schism that they had there. And that's their situation. So we will be broadcasting here permanently. And then maybe later some other places as maybe we should start generating some income or something like that, something that would pay for us to stream on maybe your favorite platform. And as always, we love to hear from you. Feedback is great. You can always follow us and hear, in real time kind of updates and stuff on our Twitter. But we check everything. We look into it. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared here real quick and let him say some words about what happened because usually I'm the go-between because I'm just like, oh my God. Like, so when everything was happening, I'm texting him and he's like, what? so excuse me. I'm gonna let him get his thoughts out now.
Well, yeah, you have RBN, which has like 4 or 5 core members, and one of their they parted ways with a core member, and we were said members. Like we basically one of their. It's like if we worked at if you imagine this is a big company, which definitely isn't. The department which we were working under was liquidated.
Right.
so,
Yes.
so it's less that it was.
It's
Usually
more
when
relatable
version,
yes.
usually when I'm doing a thing that is quote canceled, it has something to do with like the work you're doing not being satisfactory. But in this case, like Nicolette was getting at, it actually wasn't our fault, which is very exciting. It's always great if you're gonna get like roundabout fired. You can't get fired if you're not getting paid, but if you get roundabout fired for a thing where it's like, no, you were doing relatively fine work, like we have no problem with that. It is just the entire chunk of activity you're working for is going away. But I was talking about politics online before, and look at us, we're still doing it now.
Yes, and something that we joke about with each other is that we did not know each other, prior to about 7 months ago. We had never met on the internet. We had never spoken before. We didn't know. We didn't follow each other. The only thing that happened is that we both, wanted to do this. We took an invitation to work with RBN, and we both had Tuesdays free. So that is how, and then we became bros. As far as that goes, and that's why we wanted to continue on with the show because we felt like we had something here, and that's like the first thing that we said to each other was like, well, let's find a way forward.
It's kind of funny. I've been reading through. Hey, guess what? We're immediately talking about Lenin. I've been reading through Lenin's "What Is to Be Done," which is a thing he. It's like 160 pages of like rap battle between what he thinks your newspaper should say, and then when they get to the end, the whole what is to be done part, he's making the argument of like we need to make an all Russia newspaper rather than wasting our time doing all these little local newspapers that just keep getting raided by the cops because what they're doing is illegal at the time. And like going through that, I'm sitting here like, oh, this is kind of like all the YouTube channels that they keep making and fighting with each other and doing this and going back. Like someone made the comment like, wow, Lenin would be on Twitter like talking fighting with other people, and I'm like, absolutely, yeah, absolutely would be. It would hopefully be relatively high level arguing, but still, that is absolutely where they would be, which is kind of funny when you hear people like, oh, you just stop wasting your time arguing online. I'm like, well, depending on the argument,
right?
And that's not entirely useless.
That's something that kind of, I guess, was part of the divisionary process in RBN. There was a lot
fighting with it. Yeah, that was not intended to be like a Lincoln, but it's.
Well, it's kind of that was part of the. Apparently, the problems with them all had been kind of mounting, and you can listen to their discussions about it. We don't need to rehash.
Arguing over where they direct their energy. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and that was part of the problem that the member that was overseeing what we were doing, so to speak. Had kind of started picking fights with some of the people that they had been established with or working with. Some of it was warranted, some of it not. But it came off in a way as being sort of maybe being done for attention, because we know that these whole internet beef things really, really get people's attention. But that's also not our style. So we always just try to stay out of that. Like, Jared's absolutely right. Sometimes the fight is worth picking for sure, but like I'm not going to sit here and call attention to other people's media when especially if they're got lots and lots of followers and are making money and income and stuff like that. Like if you think someone is disingenuous, you can have that opinion. We have opinions about people like that as well. But if everybody's here for their own reasons, and our reason just happens to be not that we think that we're like some sort of like world saviors or anything, but it's just that. This is something I used to say on the old show, which is you got to get involved any way you can. If you can't be in the streets, and all you could do is post on social media, do it, because there's nothing wrong with that, because maybe you're getting people on your side. Maybe you're presenting a good enough meme that somebody's like, hey, I relate to this. I apologize also. I've got some vocal issues going on here right now. So if I sound sort of like a goose, I really sort of apologize more than usual. I apologize for that because I can hear it and it's driving me crazy.
But and I just always sound like this.
I always sound like this.
No, I always I'm making a joke on myself over here.
I might. I don't know. But that's great. So that just to catch you up to speed about all of that, we wish them well on their journey, because you got to think about this as well. Is we are all kind of operating at a loss. The left is really fucking small, guys. Like, it's really small, and the infighting is just so not helpful. If my suggestion to people is like, if you don't like the way someone is handling something or covering something or talking about something, tune them out and focus on what you do like. If you think somebody is maybe spreading propaganda or being paid to do so, tune them out. The deplatforming is where it's at. Okay, so that's just where we come from. That really didn't really come up so much in the argument, because like Jared said, we didn't really do anything wrong. It's just that they wanted to end the program. That was really all that it was. So it's not like they particularly, Roman in general, he had some issues with some of the one of the shows in the host on that show. So maybe it was not the other shows weren't what they were loving, didn't necessarily feel like it was fitting their brand. But we, I think we're all working towards a common goal. And, it is possible to earn money and to accept money and to advance forward and make better programming without turning into dirty capitalist pigs, right? It is possible. There are, when people, one of the big major arguments against socialism is like, oh, well, you don't want money. Of course we want money. We have to have money. We all have bills to pay. But there is an ethical way to conduct business. Like if you have a bread store and for so many loaves you sell, you also give away, that's ethical business. So that's the way that we kind of wanted to run our programming. And that's what our eye is on the future. So, and something we mentioned to each other before the start of the show is we never really felt so much limited to what we could talk about or how or when or whatever. And we usually kept things contemporary, and then I would throw in some historical stuff, and Jared would do some cool readings and some music and things like that. So we'll keep all that same kind of vibe that we were doing. It's just that, we're going to probably, if we feel like going on a tangent about, something weird like Star Trek or the Star Trek future or something like that, we might, so we're in a place now where we're going to kind of keep things open, not feel like, okay, now let's get back to, okay, now let's, kind of that kind of a thing. So that's where we are, overall.
I'll end up reading more, but if you want to hear me talk about why I don't like Star Trek Discovery, I can also talk about that.
I hate Star Trek Discovery. Oh my God, bro.
I keep watching. I'm watching the second newest. I know a new season is coming out, but we're watching through season 4. I don't know.
Oh my God, it's like a fucking liberal shit show. I cannot stand it. It is so gross. It is so gross.
They're even starting to put the script in broad strokes is getting like Star Trekier. I don't know. All I want for my Star Trek is for my future people to be put into a situation where there's seemingly not, it's a no-win thing. It's bad decision or bad decision. And then through working together and like logic and compromise, they come up with some other kind of, and they keep getting they're now putting them in those types of situations. But then once they're there, what actually ends up happening is just nothing. Oh, how did they solve this problem? They walked up a hill, they shot at a guy, and then they got teleported away. Wow.
And then everybody shared the talking stick.
Yeah, they all talked.
Talk about feelings and do therapy. Like, this is
which
fucking
is fine.
Space Wars,
You can have some of your episode be like that, but it's just the whole show.
Oh my God, it's
I
terrible.
am in space. I am gay,
I'm gonna give you a
and I am
spoiler,
sad.
baby. Did you see the did you get to the point where it was the Earth president?
I think that's the season I'm on, because they keep talking to the Earth president, who's a Cardassian, which is kind of funny.
Oh my God. Okay, I won't ruin it for you who it is, but when you see it, your head is gonna shoot off your shoulders and into space.
Are they just gonna abandon?
So I stopped watching. We had the last season to go, and we were just like, this is fucking enough.
So they're just gonna give up on that character too? Oh my God! Don't tell me this. Don't tell me that the president builds to nothing.
Oh, it's worse than nothing. Like, you were gonna be so angry. Like, the fact of it is like, I'm actually doing a rewatch of the first season again, or first series again, original series, because you can never get enough of it, honestly. And what you were saying is absolutely true. It's like bad versus bad, and then trying to figure out the best situation out of a bad situation. But sometimes it doesn't work, and they still do bad shit. like bad shit still happens.
You have a result that no one's that happy with, but
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And it's like you kind of walk away from those episodes like, well, shit, they really make the hard decisions, And yeah, so like we said, we will go on Star Trek tangents. We will talk about Star Trek Future. We will talk about Utopia. We were just right as we parted ways with RBN. And some other shows decided to keep on the channel to kind of explain what was going on. We were just like, we're not putting out any more content. We're just gonna go on our own way. So we didn't really get the chance to talk about any of this stuff.
Clean break.
But the fact of the matter is that we were just about to have our 6-month anniversary episode. So we were like, oh, let's do a Utopia show. And then that's when everything blew up. And Jared doesn't like to talk about Utopia, like he said, because it makes everybody sad, which it does. But I do like to talk about it.
It's that I don't want to do a false promise. I don't want to falsely. If you guess too far in the future, you end up setting people up to be like, "Oh, that's what it's gonna be," and it's like we don't really know what it's gonna be. So then you end up sticking to this, like, "Oh, well, the plan says this, and that's not happening. Therefore, we should." It's like now you get it's. No one knows. No one knows the hour of his coming.
Right? I get that for sure, and I do feel bad after I think about it because it's like mostly out of frustration. But I love the idea of thinking about like we're so repressed as a society, and that's on purpose because we're meant to be cogs in the machine. We had all. If you're watching this, you understand how capitalism works at this point. And Jared will also be able to enlighten us more with some Lenin stylings to tell you how it worked 100 years ago too. So right now we're basically living in a time that is like, that's why everybody calls it, or a lot of people call it like end stage capitalism, because we're at a point now where it's like only down, like there is no up as long as this goes on. And when you look at, empires, when empires, fall, we're right. Historically, we are right there at the cusp of where that is. So that's a lot of the stuff that comes into the conversation.
Old system dying, new system being born out of the old system, and we're
rising from the ashes, as it were. But what I like about the idea of the whole utopianism is that I think about like what if we could get away from having to be tied to our jobs for both money and for healthcare and for the healthcare of our families sometimes because of the way insurance plans work. We could get rid of all these stupid things that we're constantly fighting about. And everybody could do what they're good at. Think about if you could just like, how much would you love it if you could just go and spend all day baking bread in your kitchen? You know what I mean? And selling it, like, because it's what you love to do. Or anything like that. Maybe you like to sew, or maybe you want to sell clothes, whatever.
The phrase communism as free time only floats around a lot when they're talking like, well, how do you talk to people? It's like communism is free time only, period. Like, that's it. Well, don't you have to all get on brown shirts and kill your mom? And it's like, no, it's free time only. That's it. That's all it is. You can either go to an 18-hour work week for all of North America, or a lot of us have to just like die of starvation in the streets. Like those are currently the options. Like those are the forks in the path right now. And none of that involves ideology or forcing you to fucking. I'm already saying. I'm already cursing. We're already forcing you to go like.
We do what we want.
You don't have to worship at Marx. You have to think Marx is a good guy. You don't have to love Stalin or whatever. But no, economically, we either need to reduce working hours and have everyone have something to do, or you end up with like Great Depression Part 7 because we've already done parts like 2, 3, and 4.
Because you got to think about also, if people are allowed to do what they want to do, everything would still get done. Like the people who want to be like astrophysicists would still get to go do that if they wanted to. But you wouldn't be, that's always the big myth about what's going on in like Cuba or like socialist countries. Like, oh, well, they made a doctor go clean toilets. Like, that's not how that works. Like,
they might have made them go work in the countryside with poor people. Oh, no.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Right. Like, be like civically minded. And it's just that it's not like that. You could talk to anybody across the political spectrum as long as they're basically reasonable. I'm not talking about like far right, horrible people that you wouldn't talk to anyway for any reason. What I mean is that like you could, if you're having a reasonable conversation, we all would basically agree on the same few points. We're not making enough money. We're not getting, we're wasting our lives and our bodies on jobs and on things that mostly could be automated, but we're not benefiting from the automation. And the automation, situation is here. The reason I got into doing this, the entire reason I got into doing this is because I lost my job to AI, and my entire industry is failing at this point. I know I'm a writer, like as a creatively, but I also am a technical writer, a medical writer. That's what I do, and now,
Which
and
is
you
just
should
chat
be afraid
GPT.
of this.
They
They are, these companies that would used to employ people to write for them and work for them to write textbooks and educational materials are having AI do it and then like one person check it. So there's going to be textbooks out there on medicine. There's going to be textbooks out there on explosives and whatever, like things that could really hurt people that are like the Google AI thing that happened where they had to withdraw how stupid it was. They're telling you put glue on your pizza and like, yeah, a horse went to space in 1982. And, so that's, we all have a kind of like, that is enough moment where we kind of feel like where we got to fit into somewhere. And that's, we're in a real moment. Right.
Your company
now
could have kept the same number of employees, except now you work 10 hours a week because you're really just like you and Chat GPT are like putting shit together yourself, because you also have technical writing skills, so you can look at something that has been done partially by an AI and make it not wrong.
Right.
Like you can do the editing, which is like the actual work part, the part that requires expertise and knowing what the hell you're doing. Like they'll give you some word salad and then you unsalad it into something that is actually presentable. But no, they'd rather pay one person to work a certain amount of time and then just fire everybody else. That's why I talk about reduced to an 18-hour
work that like all of these people would have done. Just because a machine can do it in 2 seconds, that doesn't mean that now only single editor can go through all that material, themselves.
And they can hire somebody who doesn't necessarily even know what they're doing. Because they can pay them less. Like, are they going to hire somebody with like a master's in technical writing and like 40 years experience, or are they going to hire? You'll be fine. Like, just get in there, kid.
You'll be fine, exactly. And so that was my kind of like it's like I Joker moment, I guess you would say. Like that's where I had to be like, I need to do something right now because things are insane and I need to say something. And I started to do it on my own personal YouTube channel, and that like wasn't really working out because the only reason that people came to me on my YouTube channel was because they wanted to hear me talk about Buster Keaton and Bonanza. So I was like, fuck the system suddenly, and then like it was like can we talk about Buster again, please? So now we're here, several months later. But that's what we wanted you to know. Basically, if you were a long time viewer, I'm talking about we're all in the trenches, right? But if you're coming to us now as an independent source, away from RBN, or if this is like your first time viewing, if you're seeing this live or you're not seeing this live, if you are seeing this live, thank you, we appreciate it.
Hey, if you're ready for a news story that kind of ties together a lot of the things talking about.
Yeah, if we did have a couple of stories to kind of ease you into the whole thing if you wanted to hear about it, and then Jared's going to read for us a little bit. So why don't I be quiet for a second, let Jared talk a little bit.
So we're reading from talking about alternative media things breaking up and changing personnel. We have The Hill. The Hill recently dumped Brianna Joy Gray. Brianna Joy Gray has many opinions that I do not like, but she goes to the mat on a lot of these issues in ways that I do agree with. I kind of see her as like a positive class traitor, if that makes sense, because she's like, wasn't she like Harvard educated? She's like an actual, she could very easily be an MSNBC freaking husk if she really wanted to, and she hasn't. She keeps staying out here. She keeps getting fired from the Hill she got fired from the Hill because she's not down with the Zionist program. I think I saw a clip, she like rolled her eyes at someone doing an Israel interview, and they're like, oh, that was it, she's out. Why was she rolling her eyes? Because of the second thing we'll talk about, which is like, oh hey, remember how there were all these beheaded babies, and but actually
the Hill has kind of systematically been getting rid of all their more left-leaning commentators, anyway.
Dude,
so it's less about her and it's more about the control over the media that is the real issue.
If they're gonna ditch freaking what's his name, Mehdi Hasan from MSNBC, Mehdi Hasan, one of the most like ruthless attack dogs for Empire that mainstream cable news had. They got rid of him. Why? Because he's Muslim, and they figured he wouldn't be super happy about what's going on in Palestine, and they were right. If they got rid of him, he didn't even go on his show and do some big like the Zionist entity must be destroyed. Like he didn't do any of that. He had like some like he's like, well, let's look at this. Let's actually examine. And when you hear him like getting on a roll, you're like, man, he is an excellent propagandist. Like, if he could use his powers for good, he's a great guy to have on your team because he just sucks. Like, the arguments he makes, you just want to choke him. But if he's on your side, it's like, oh, this guy's great. Like, he can get out there and debate bro
People
tactic.
Who can really control the narrative is,
Oh, absolutely. Like, he stays on script. He says the things. But we're reading from The Hill here, and what are we talking about? Trump slams Biden executive action on border as bullshit, which is now two guys fighting over the same policy.
Let me interject real quick one thing.
Go for it.
If you are new to the show, you should know that this is not a Biden-friendly show. This is not a Democrat-friendly show. This is not a Trump-friendly show. This is not a Republican-friendly show. This is not a duopoly-friendly show. We are very much against everything.
Not a friendly show.
So if you are tuning into this, it'd be hilarious to watch the numbers drop. Like, oh, if you are tuning into this thinking that we're going to be like pro-Democrat or pro-Biden or vice versa. No. No.
People I criticize are, you're going to hear me talk more about the Biden administration because that's the current administration. If we go into the future a year and it is a different administration, that's going to be the one that we're focusing on criticizing more because they are the ones that have power. Like, and besides, what are we like? You know all the things about Trump. He actually gets covered when he does things that are not great. That's part of my like fainting point in all of this is, man, if only, like, I think the way that you can get people to care about some of this stuff is if you just said, oh my goodness, did you hear what President Trump did? And they'll be like, what did he do? And like, they won't even register. Oh, right, he's not actually the president right now.
Right.
Just say, because my criticism is not that Biden is too different from Trump. It is that they do the exact same thing. Like, when it comes down to it, it's just sometimes they'll have a nicer message around it. Former President Trump slammed President Biden's recent executive action on the U.S. southern border, calling it bullshit, while speaking at a rally in Nevada on Sunday. While speaking to supporters in Las Vegas, Trump alleged that Biden's executive action on the border was pro-invasion, encouraged human trafficking, and was pro-drug dealers. Why is this all funny? Because he's just doing the same exact thing that Trump did when he was the president. So he's like, you doing my policy is bad. It's weak. It's weak, it's ineffective, it's bullshit what he signed, Trump said as the crowd chanted, bullshit. It's probably, see, this would be fun. It's fun. It's a party. Go to these. I don't want to go to one of these rallies because then, Jesus, you get put on a list or something. But, like,
right?
It's probably really fun. It sounds like it's fun. It's like a wrestling show. You know when to chant, you boo, you cheer, then you go home, you get your T-shirt. On Tuesday, Biden announced executive action related to asylum seekers at the U.S. southern border. I'm sure you guys... I see the only crappy thing about Twitter is I don't get a comment section, so I would love to hear, like, has anyone... Am I surprising anyone with this? Has everyone already heard about this? 'Cause, I mean, it was only a week ago, but it was pretty big news.
Right.
Yeah, he... When the 7-day average of border crossings reaches more than 2,500 among the ports of entry, like the entire border ports of entry, the executive action allows most asylum seekers to be turned away at the border with certain exceptions. The president said Tuesday, Republicans, quote, left me no choice but to use executive action to address border crossings at the U.S. southern border after Republicans again opposed efforts to revive a bipartisan border bill. The bipartisan border bill failed. I don't know if they've done another one since, but it was because it included increased war in Ukraine funding, more weapons shipments to Ukraine. So that was, if you remember that whole fight, that was like they ousted the former Speaker of the House because he was going to keep the Ukraine funding in these bills, and then Speaker Johnson, the current guy, was put in under the promise that, no, I won't do that. I'll force them to... You're supposed to have to now vote like single issue bills, which was one of the reasons they fought about. But of course, they aren't actually doing that. Johnson said he would, but he isn't because, of course. So that's when they talk about Republicans left me no choice, because Republicans obviously, like, they campaign on closing down the border all the time, but they want to get through the Ukraine funding. So, like, they aren't allowed to hand the Democrats a win, as it's now seen, by increasing border funding. So do you see this, like, really silly and weird situation we're now in, where you have two different parties who are telling you that they will shut down the border more so, where I remember just a few years ago, we're supposed to be voting for the Democrats because they are pro-immigrant, whatever that means.
Right.
Whatever that means to them, I should say.
That's what it like. They had a big selling point on all that. The kids were coming out of the cages. They just called them something else. Like that's all still happening, and the whole big meltdowns at the border. But then, like pretty much as soon as he was in office, we had that whole dust up where people on horseback were like hitting Haitians with ropes and whips and stuff. So I mean, it's like this happened. It just took like 1 second just for these people with the same ideology. It doesn't really matter if you're team red, team blue. They're all serving the same purpose.
So, like, give them the briefest summary, because I could talk about this for like an hour and why I think how I do. I do see, like, it is an issue that so many people are coming up. I don't want to say flooding across. I don't want to use the same kind of weird language they use, but people don't leave their country and walk to a different one because they're having a great time in their home country. Anybody who wants to talk about closing down, shutting down the border, and stopping illegal immigration, you also have to be talking about closing down foreign U.S. military bases. Because why, especially if you just go for Latin and South America, these countries are kept intentionally poor. Like this whole idea of poor countries is kind of a misnomer, because all the quote poor countries are very, very rich in resources. I know they're rich in resources because the U.S. has exerted violent force in the past, and frequently does so, in order to gain greater control of those resources. So if there's nothing there worth anything, why are we messing around in their economies? Like, why are people coming up from Guatemala? Because the U.S. in the past has intervened with Guatemala. We basically own their any industry they have is kind of ours in a way, because our business, and I say ours, not ours, the American people's, but the American ruling classes, because they've put a lot of effort into making sure that anything valuable going on to the south of America is of the United States is controlled, or at least strongly influenced. We get deals that no sane business person would ever make, because they were made or are made under the threat of a rifle. So the quote immigration crisis, it is a crisis, but it's one that we feed on all sides, and that's ignoring the secondary. Like, why is this kind of stuff allowed to continue? Because, like, the idea that the U.S. is incapable of securing its border is crazy, right? Like, we have the biggest military in the entire world. We could definitely just we could make it zero a day if we really, really wanted to. So why doesn't it? And we keep pretending like that someone like wants to do that. Like your DeSantis's are all out there like, oh, we will. We're going to shut it down to complete zero. But you can't do that, because Tyson Chicken and all these other large companies that rely on immigrant labor are going to need basically a constant drip supply of slaves. Now, they're not literally slaves. Like, you do get paid, but you hire immigrant labor for the same reason you hire like student labor. They are not going to be in nearly as strong of a negotiating position to fight for their rights. They aren't going to really even know what their rights are, because in the case of students, it's because they haven't worked very many jobs. And in the case of immigrants, it's the constant threat of deportation, action against you, and they can just make stuff up and tell you it, and what are you going to do? Go get a lawyer and find out? Like, no, you're just going to go, okay, sure, whatever, man. It's like, you sleep in this bed, you work here.
Take advantage of vulnerable people.
Yeah, it's a much easier labor force to take advantage of. So when you get into they took our gerbs, like it's like too far in one direction. It places the blame in the wrong place. It's not immigrants coming in and literally like, you know what, I'm here to harm the American economy. It's large mega corporations saying, you know what, American labor would cost this much, immigrant labor costs this much, and then we can just tell the two that they are each other's problem, rather than us, rather than the mega corporations who have actual leverage and agency in this. They drive down wages. It basically caps, our minimum wage never goes up. It's like, you know what can help be a downward force on wages? A large labor supply that is willing to work for basically nothing. Or at least the legal minimum. This is how they used
to historically fan the flames of,
Sorry, I just want to change willing to forced to. It's not really about willing. Continue.
Well, it was just, if you look at, there's a historical precedent for this. Not just, capitalists are going to capitalize, but this was always used as a race baiting technique, where if you convince the poor, destitute white man that the poor, destitute black man was taking his resources and was his enemy, then
It was
you're
an
not looking at the boss. You're not looking at the capitalists who are making a killing off of both of the fact that you are being forced to participate in slave labor. So that is the historical precedent of this, and it's always been a very effective methodology. So applying it to students, applying it to immigrants, because it's less taboo and less in people's faces everyday life than to say, to race bait specifically.
As soon as slavery ended, that was used as the way to be able to try to enforce these Jim Crow laws. It was like, look, these guys are willing to work for nothing because they used to work for literally nothing. They are your enemy. They are pushing your wages down, not the guy who's hiring that. Like, if you think about it for even half a second, you're like, right, the really poor person with no leverage, no education, probably illiterate, or in this case doesn't speak the language. They might speak Spanish, not English, probably can read just fine, but like, it is so much easier to take advantage of that person, and then you get to point at the native, American laborer of any race. Heck, whose wages are getting pushed down by like African American wages are being now, like, the whole thing is slid up a slide now, right? Because it's been too long since the end of slavery, so now, like, most Americans are illiterate. They've kind of figured out their rights. So who do you have to bring in? A whole a different group of people to just restart this whole weird, like, labor hierarchy where get you to fight each other, so you never point at the person who actually has decision-making power in this.
And if you're wondering, this is where child labor is factoring into this as well.
Absolutely.
This is why you're like, why in the hell would they repeal these child labor laws? Why are their children working overnight shifts on the, kill floor of a slaughterhouse? It's not affluent white America's children now, is it?
And the excuse isn't that you're supposed to.
Of the population.
The excuse isn't that you're supposed to hate the children, obviously, because no one's going to. It's instead, no, it's good for them. It gets you the work ethic. Like, they just changed the justifying ideology, but there's always a justifying reason for it. Like, there's got to be something.
Yes. There was something I saw yesterday, which was they were a Chick-fil-A, which, is a very scrupulous company. They were trying to advertise the idea of like a Chick-fil-A summer camp for children. And like, are you kidding? Like, come the fuck on. Like, this is obviously to, like, get, like, little kids working for Chick-fil-A for free, which they already do. They hire children, so we're at the same, this is, again, wraps into the whole in-stage capitalism idea. Like, when you get to the point where either your army or your workforce, you start making forcing children to serve, that is where you're at the end of your empire.
Yeah, it's a summer camp where it's teaching them how to work at a Chick-fil-A. That's the kicker of all of it. It's like, here's how you take an order. Here's how you. And the sad thing is, those aren't even invaluable skills. I wouldn't even argue that those aren't things that if you're gonna enter the workforce in the in the lower end of it, in the working class arena, frick, it's not even that bad of a move. Like, to be totally cynical, it's like, those are valuable skills, kinda.
There's something to know. I mean, a lot of people have to go through that process onto something else. But for many people, that is their income, that is their livelihood. So, and that's why, people on the left a lot of people on the left get really upset when people are like, oh, well, I'm supposed to think that somebody making a hamburger should get $20 an hour. Yes, because it doesn't hurt you, first of all. And second of all, they're working for some of the most predatory capitalists that there are in this entire world, who are making just an absolute killing off of their labor. So that puts them in a position of, like, yes, they should be getting that and more, much more. So that again, you're going to hear this a lot on our show. Unionize your workplace. The Starbucks that are unionizing, and some of the fast food places that are unionizing. Union. They have their problems, they have their issues. Sometimes the hierarchy and the leadership is not exactly ideal, but it's better than nothing. And I personally want to see unions expand beyond labor and into other areas of life. But that is the core tenet, pretty much, of our belief system on this social contract, is where people can get together and dictate where things go and dictate the power.